Hi, my name is Gooba, and I refuse to stop talking about The Last of Us Part 2. You may want me to talk about other games, and I do from time to time, but this game has had such a stranglehold on my life that even now, 2 years after its initial release, I still can't get it out of my head. However, today's topic of conversation won't necessarily be the game that was released, but rather the game that many players were hoping for leading up to release. That is, before the story leaks, of course, because some people really suck and want to ruin everyone else's experience. I would like to talk about the story the trailers told, and how different the game would be if Naughty Dog had followed that narrative. As always, major spoilers for both Last of Us games. If you don't want to be spoiled, just play them already. They're good games, I promise. Let's go back to December 3rd, 2016. We're about 3 years and change past the release of the first Last of Us game. Joel and Ellie are both safely back in Jackson, and although Joel's lie at the end of part 1 does leave the story open to a sequel, most fans, myself included, don't really see a need for one. The first game was nothing short of a masterpiece, so choosing to risk the series' legacy by continuing the story felt like a bit of a cash grab to die-hard fans. But still, we all lost our collective shit when Sony did this at PSX 2016. All it took was a firefly symbol on a stop sign for the entire internet to lose their minds with excitement. I probably owe my old job a day's worth of wages back, because the day this trailer dropped, I did nothing but sit at my desk and watch it over and over. This initial trailer doesn't tell us very much at all about the story, but it does reveal enough to get the rumor mills churning. It's pretty clear that Ellie will take the lead this time, as the first half of the trailer is solely focused on her. When Joel finally makes an appearance, it's much more subtle. You don't see his face at all during the trailer, and you only hear his voice for 2 lines at the very end. He walks through the house passing several dead bodies as he makes his way to the room Ellie is sitting in playing guitar. And with Ellie's final line of the trailer, the basic theme of the story is revealed.
I'm gonna find, and I'm gonna kill every last one of them.
Revenge. Now, almost immediately, fans began to speculate that Joel was already dead, as his face is never shown, and he sort of appears out of the fog before entering the house, implying that he's a ghost living on in Ellie's imagination, and the every last one of them she refers to are the people who killed him. They had no idea how right they were, but at the time, that's all it was, speculation. Over the next few years, fans' predictions for the story would begin to shift as more information about the game came out. The second trailer, released at Paris Games Week in 2017, almost a year after the initial reveal, was a bit of a mindfuck, as it had absolutely nothing to do with Joel or Ellie. It featured an unnamed woman being captured and almost killed by a group of cultists, but ultimately being rescued by 2 children who deserted the group, Yara and Lev. We have no idea who this woman is, when or where this takes place, or how it ties into the story we know so far. The 2 things it does tell us is that Naughty Dog has aggressively upped their realistic animation game, and that they are not shying away from the brutality or violence even a little bit. In terms of the unnamed woman we now know as Abby, most people didn't really know what to make of her appearance, but there definitely were some theories. I personally subscribe to the theory that this was a flashback to earlier in the post-outbreak world, and that this woman was in fact Anna, Ellie's mother, who we've never seen. Since we know based on the first trailer that Ellie will likely be the main protagonist, this ties into the idea of learning more about Ellie's backstory, and in turn, her mother's as well. I, and many other fans, would hold on to this theory leading up to the game's release, as you don't see Abby, Yara, and Lev in any other trailers from here on out. The next big development in this game's development. Look, it's hard to come up with smart-sounding words when I write these scripts. You gotta give me a break here. The next big development came when the first gameplay reveal for Part 2 aired during Sony's showcase at E3 2018. Aside from some of the most technically impressive gameplay we've ever seen at E3, we did get a bit more information on the story as well. The trailer shows Ellie at a dance in Jackson, where she talks to a new character, Jesse, about their patrols and his ex-girlfriend Dina. Dina eventually steals Ellie for a dance, and after a bit of flirting, Ellie and Dina share their first kiss on the dance floor. This is the first indication of Dina being Ellie's love interest in Part 2, which is an important theme in future trailers. And during Ellie's conversation with Jesse, he brings up a lecture he received from Joel earlier in the day, confirming that Joel is still alive, at least for the time being. At this point, we still have no clear indication on what's driving Ellie's vengeful rage, but this trailer laid the groundwork for what characters will be important to Ellie's story in part 2. So let's break down what we know from the trailers so far. Ellie is older now, she's the main protagonist, and she's seeking revenge on some unknown group for something we don't know about yet. Joel may or may not be dead, but he for sure takes some part in the game. Jesse is a friend and fellow patrolman of Ellie's, and Dina is Ellie's love interest. And there is an unnamed woman who may or may not be Ellie's mother that also ties into the story somehow. All the pieces are there, we just need a bit more information to start putting them together. Well, we got that information on September 24th, 2019, when Naughty Dog dropped the release date reveal trailer for The Last of Us Part 2 at Sony's State of Play event. In just 3 minutes, this trailer took every fan theory that had been presented so far and flipped it on its head. It begins with a calm moment between Ellie and Dina the day after the dance, sharing a weed and talking about their kiss from the night before. But things take an ominous turn when the trailer shows some cuts of Ellie and Dina encountering infected on their patrol, and eventually showing Ellie riding through a blizzard alone, calling out for Dina. She approaches a seemingly inhabited cabin, and we see some cuts of her exploring before making her way to the basement door with a trail of blood leading to it. Ellie opens the door, is ambushed, and pleads to her captors to stop whatever they're doing before the screen cuts to black. You hear a single gunshot and Ellie screams. The next minute or so is a series of cuts of Ellie going absolutely apeshit on several groups of people and infected, and then, in the final seconds of the trailer, Naughty Dog did this.
What the hell are you doing here?
You think I'd let you do this on your own?
That's right, gamers. Your boy is back, and it's a Joel and Ellie adventure part 2.
Are you sure about that?
This trailer and the remaining trailers leading up to release basically solidified in fans' minds that this story was going to be Ellie's revenge tale on the people who killed Dina, and that Joel and Jesse would have some part in it. Despite some internet shitheads leaking the game's story in April of 2020, Naughty Dog continued this ad campaign that implied that Joel was in fact alive and would be the secondary protagonist all the way up to release. On May 6th, they released a story trailer that shows even more of Joel's involvement in Ellie's mission, and on June 3rd, they released a cinematic trailer showing Ellie having a flashback during a firefight where she is sitting next to Dina, who is wearing a bracelet that Ellie is now wearing in present time, implying that Ellie kept Dina's bracelet as a keepsake after her death and is using it as a reminder of what these people did to her. And there it is. If you're like me and you purposely avoided the leaks, this is the story you are probably anticipating based on the trailers. But summarizing the trailer story is just one objective of this video. The other objective is to compare this story to the story that was released and see which one I believe was the better choice. So first and foremost, we got duped. Neil and the gang pulled some dark magic shit and really made us believe we were getting another cross-country adventure with Joel and Ellie. Now I understand using marketing to subvert expectations, but how dare you? For over a year, you made fans believe that Joel would be our designated murder buddy for this game, but instead we get to watch him have his skull caved in and replaced by Jesse. And I know I've made 3 videos talking about how much I love this game, but damn it, I never got to be angry about this. Okay. So let's talk about how the story the trailers told would have played out. First off, we need to specify a villain. Let's say we just do a 1-for-1 replacement of Joel with Dina. The WLF/former Fireflies capture Dina out in the blizzard. Perhaps instead of Abby seeking revenge on her father's killer, she and the remaining Fireflies are looking to hurt them emotionally by killing someone they love. But unfortunately for them, Ellie shows up, sees who they are, and for some reason they let her live anyway and flee back to Washington. Now Ellie, who is determined to avenge her girlfriend's death, chooses to ignore Joel and Tommy's warnings about retaliating against a larger group and sets out on a solo mission to Seattle. The first few chapters of the game remain mostly the same, with Ellie out on her own exploring Seattle and hunting down leads on Dina's killers, while the game explores some of Ellie's backstory we haven't seen yet through flashbacks. Eventually, Joel joins her and Ellie starts to unravel what actually happened at the hospital in Salt Lake 5 years ago, and learns that it was actually Joel who the Fireflies are after. This would inevitably lead to a falling out between Joel and Ellie, as Ellie now blames him for what he did at the Firefly hospital hospital, and for his actions being the reason her girlfriend was killed. At some point, Jesse joins Ellie as well, but after seeing how this quest for revenge has consumed her, he also leaves her to avenge Dina's death on her own. The game would conclude with Ellie having a final showdown with Abby, and in a perfect world, you as the player would get to choose whether to kill or spare her in the end. Because this is my interpretation of the story strictly based on the trailers, I don't believe we would still have the mid-game protagonist switch where we play the same 3 days as Abby, because if she had chosen to kill Dina, an innocent bystander, instead of Joel, who actually killed her father, I don't think she'd be as redeemable in this story. Your decision to kill or spare Abby in the end would entirely depend on Ellie and you as the player's growth throughout the game. So after going through the entire archive of pre-release trailers for The Last of Us Part 2, putting a story together based on them, and pitting that story against the final release version, the question remains: which story is better? Does the trailer story hold the same emotional weight as the story from the final game? In my personal opinion, no. I don't think it does. I believe Joel's death and subsequent absence from the game is what made it so emotionally impactful. Ellie is not only struggling with her anger and resentment towards Joel for what he did in Salt Lake, but also dealing with the grief of losing the same man who she sees as a father figure. Although losing Dina would probably be equally as heartbreaking for Ellie, it wouldn't be as impactful for the fans who just met Dina a few hours ago and who've known Joel for 7 years. And for the people who like to refer to the story of Part 2 as revenge bad, I feel that if the story had fallen in line with the trailers, that's exactly what it would be. But I want this video to be a discussion, so if you agreed or disagreed with any of the points I made, let me know in the comments so we can talk about it. If you want to see more of us, you can follow us on Twitch, where we're streaming twice a week. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok for fun skits and shorter videos. And we have a Discord if you'd like to talk to us about video games or anything else. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.